This is going to be fun. I'm really excited to present over this, guys. But first, I want to ask you all, what have you thought so far? Have you received value? Would you say that this has been a valuable experience up to this point? Cool. Virtual attendees, wherever you are, drop in the comments if you've received value from wherever you reside. And we're just getting started, guys. There's so much good shit ahead. But the next question I want to ask you guys is, we've talked a lot about your why and your purpose for wanting to build a business, which I love that there's been this recurring theme, which was not planned. And it's something that I'm always thinking about as well, and I'm trying to dig deeper. And all these things are important and fascinating to me because it's something that I've never really exactly figured out. I'm still working on that. But as I reflect, the one thing I can say is I really love building awesome shit that help people. I mean, that's just a foundation. And it's simplistic, but it's true. And I also really love impressing Aaron. So those two things together are a good combination. But being facetious aside, something with like massive moving parts and complex systems and things that make no sense, they really spark interest for me. They make me excited. And I want to know, does anybody else just get excited around things that are like that, and ambiguous projects, things that are a lot of moving parts, things that you don't get a payoff for weeks, months? John's raising his hand. What other psychos are out there? A few people, cool. And sometimes that shit works and sometimes it doesn't, but it really doesn't matter because by the time it's finished, you're already on to the next thing. And somebody else is like, hey man, this was awesome. You're like, cool, well, awesome, cool. And I just love the work. And the point that I'm getting at is I'm passionate about these things because I've spent a long time developing that craft. And I really believe that, fulfillment comes from the person that you end up becoming along the way while pursuing a craftsman or a craft, becoming really good at something. It doesn't come with dollar signs or clients. And a quote I want to share here from Cal Newport, one of my favorite authors. He says that passion comes after you put in the hard work to become excellent at something and to become valuable, not before. So in other words, what you do for a living is much less important than how you do it. And that's something that always has resonated with me. It has nothing to do with my speech. But just wanted to share that. So, future of client acquisition, guys. I'm going to share with you some technical stuff. We've talked a lot of, contextual, high level, like more meta things. This is going to be scrappy and technical. So we're going to, anybody down to learn how to get clients, learn how to get more clients? You guys ready for that? Cool. So here's my big promise. How to adapt with an evolving fitness market to overcome code red level market sophistication and deploy a scalable acquisition system that doesn't require you to be the dancing bear on social media, right? As long as you show up and you're dancing, maybe clients come, maybe they don't. And this is going to be something that is a lot simpler than what you might think. So what we're going to cover, real quick, if I can get this to work. Why, if you don't learn to be just as good of a marketer as a coach, your business is doomed in the long term. Client acquisition models that are actually working today, old way of acquisition versus the new way that I'm going to share today, and a thing that I've kind of coined, connection-based permission marketing. Then we're going to talk about how a free Facebook community can, for a lot of you guys, be the core center of your acquisition system, and how to build, manage, and nurture free groups. How to fill the group with dream prospects, and also paid advertising. I'm going to talk about paid a little bit. And then also content strategy, kind of making sense of the whole age-old question, right? How often or what should I post? Cool. So I want to ask you guys a question. Who is the most important person, and if you guys have heard me say this before, play along, but who's the most important person in a dentist office? If anybody wants to take a shot at that. Receptionist, front desk. Inpatient. Those are all good guesses. Anybody else? It's the person who brings the leads. If there's nobody to bring in leads, the receptionist can't do receptionist stuff. Dentist can't do dentist stuff. Come on. Whoever acquires the customers. Without the customer, dentist doesn't get to dentist, right? And oftentimes we have this flawed assumption that in our own business, that as the coach, hey, everything rests on the coach. Don't get me wrong, it's a very important component of it. But you're not a very good coach if you don't have anybody to coach, right? And so often we lose sight of that, and we have these beliefs and these things. Emily talked about this a lot. It's well, I don't want to be a marketer, right? Well, then you don't want to be a coach. All right, so first I want to do some education around acquisition channels. So there are 6 core channels that we as online coaches have at our disposal to acquire customers. Number 1, you have earned media. Basically, this is Instagram, and when I say earned, it's you've put in the work to develop trust, authority with an audience. You've kind of earned that acquisition channel. It's Instagram, Facebook, all the ones you guys are probably familiar with. Podcasts. This can include, God, this fucking clicker. YouTube, LinkedIn. No, I'll be all right. Owned media. So owned media is very important. It's that could be, that's an acquisition channel that you actually own, that you're not at the disposal of, Zuckerberg or whoever decides to possibly change the algorithm or make a shift that could totally fuck your business over. But you have email lists, SMS lists. When I say SMS, it's like texting lists. You also have like a CRM base or a customer relationship manager and a private Facebook group. Now, this is kind of like in between earned and owned because, of course, Facebook could go away. But you have a lot more control over a Facebook group, and I'll explain why. Next is going to be referrals. And this is one that I'm especially, that I want to touch on just for a second. Referrals should make up at least 20% of your business, okay? And I want to ask you guys, who all gets steady clients right now from referrals? At least 20%. Lacey's there. Nice. Good amount of hands raised. So the thing that's going to allow you to get referrals, I'm going to share with you a model around this. It's really quite simple. Remembering people's names, right? And Aaron mentioned how we fucked that up, but that was an automation thing. It was Augusto's fault. But, remember people's name and doing things that are inefficient to show another level of care within the company. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But Gary Vee said something one time that I want to share with you that was powerful to me. He says, as we go more Jetsons, the people who act more like the Flintstones are going to win. Okay, so what does that mean? So if you're in the fitness industry and let's say you're selling a low ticket product or, let's get this all out there. Say you're selling like a low ticket product or programs, whatever it might be. And if you're not deploying a high level service on that product, something that gives a high amount of touch and personalization and builds connection, you're leaving so much on the table. You're leaving a lot of potential client results. You're leaving the opportunity for those clients to stay longer because there's relationships being made. And you're leaving so much money on the table. You can charge for that, right? And this ultimately will lead to more referrals. So while everyone else is thinking in this industry, as we move towards this social media age, like, hey, how do I automate everything? Don't get me wrong. Fucking love automations. But with the human component, the connection component, you want to be very careful. And I would actually encourage you guys to go the other way. So while they're thinking, how can I use technology to remove the human component, I would be thinking, how do I add more human components, charge more for it as this becomes less available? And then scale the fuck out of that, right? And if you want to, you don't have to, as we've learned today. You don't have to scale the fuck out of it, but if you want to. But regardless, you should be finding ways to check in with your clients on an often recurring basis, right? And this doesn't necessarily have to be you. When you go to the dentist's office and you have your teeth worked on, and a day later, 2 days later, you get a text from the dentist, hey, how are things going? Guess what? That's not the dentist, right? It would be kind of weird if it was. Like, don't you have more important shit to do? But if you can create a culture within your team that shows that extra level of care, it can be the game changer for the growth of your business. Cool. Next is partners and affiliates. Cross-selling partnerships with, for example, supplement companies. We're doing a partnership this weekend with Morphogen Nutrition. We're collaborating, sharing audiences. It's a win-win. And another thing around this is the Dream 100. So the Dream 100 is essentially, I'm going to share with you what this is in the context of how Tom Bailu, who built Quest Nutrition, if you guys are familiar with that, $1 billion company. This is a quote from him. We had a very different approach that got a lot of people excited, not just about the product, but they felt good about the way that we treated them. We went old school. We researched several hundred health and fitness influencers, and we sent them handwritten letters, inconvenience, right? Handwritten letters and free samples. And this was all about showing an understanding of what others were trying to achieve, that Quest was interested in helping them connect to their audiences. When people are building community, they have a real sense of service to that community. And we would send them free product and say, hey, if you like this, tell people about it. If you hate it, tell them about that too. So it's something to ask yourself, right? Who has your dream customers? Websites, Facebook groups, forums, message boards, influencers. And the goal here is how do you build relationships without any intent of receiving anything in the short term or long term? Building relationships. And then when you nurture those relationships long term, eventually by adding value, you might get the opportunity to cross-pollinate or to collaborate. And being human, right? Just building relationships. Now, this is one that I wouldn't really worry about if you're early in your business. This is one that I'm just now starting to become intentional about later because we've kind of capitalized on the more low-hanging fruit acquisition channels, but this is something to be thinking about long term. That doesn't mean you shouldn't spend 30 minutes a week being intentional with building relationships with people who might have your customers, all right? So the next one is going to be manual outbound. We're all familiar with this. Facebook group hunting, deploying VAs to get people to raise their hand, not try to sell. You never want to send a VA to do a salesperson's job, first of all. But just getting touch points, all right? I'm not a huge fan of this either. It's just a model. It works, but I wouldn't leverage it right now if I were you guys. Scrubbing targeted lists. But the one that I would challenge a lot of you guys to start considering is paid advertising, and I'll explain why. You know, Facebook, YouTube, Hulu, LinkedIn, you guys are familiar with all of these. And whatever you do, fuck traditional advertising in our space, like, it's just not worth it. So, now the main model of this presentation I'm gonna get into, and it's called, come on, the old way. The old way of marketing is this interruption, right? This interruption-based marketing, where it's like, you know, you're trying to like jump in front of somebody and catch their attention and sell them something. And just like this guy, right? Online coaching spots now available. Give me money, please. I'll discount it. Whatever it'll take, right? Or swipe up to join the team, or spots open for coaching. Now, why this is a problem? Social media engagement is on a massive decline. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but it's only going to get worse. You know, as these channels continue to monetize advertising, then it means less for the content producers, right? It's just how it's designed. So on Facebook, as an example, about 5.2% on Facebook and Instagram is the average engagement for one of your posts. That means 1 in every 19 people are going to see your shit, okay? But by using systems such as email, you're looking more like 15, 25%. Things like ManyChat or Facebook Messenger or SMS. So for example, we're sending out texts now that are getting a 98% open rate. 98% of people see your stuff. But there's a wrong way and right way to use these things, all right? And I'm gonna share with you what that is. So why this old way of marketing is just completely becoming obsolete? It's because humans have a finite amount of attention these days, right? You guys know this, we're inundated with stuff. So you can't consume everything, right? Remember that everything, or you can't consume everything, you can't remember everything and do everything. The amount of noise in our lives, as that increases, the amount of messages that are actually gonna stick and resonate decreases. So we have to really learn how to become efficient marketers just as much, if not more than coaches, in order to get our message across and to build, you know, a long-term growing business. We also have a finite amount of money. Unfortunately, we can't just like we can't buy everything we see. And every time someone chooses to do a cleanse or, you know, some kind of a bullshit product, they're ultimately choosing not to work with somebody like in this room, right? Who actually has intent to help somebody long-term. And I don't know if you guys are okay with that, but I'm not, right? I'm not willing to play that game. The other reason is that convenience is king. All right, we're moving into an era of convenience. So interruption marketing is really the epitome or the antithesis to convenience. It's actually taking time away from people, and they get pissed about that. They don't like that. So by constantly interrupting people to say, hey, buy my shit, you're presenting a cost to the consumer that's way too high. And this also applies to your offer, okay? So if your offer does not communicate simplicity, convenience, ease, right? Like, think about it. Nobody's gonna, maybe some people will, but like, hey, buy my coaching. I'm gonna teach you how to train 6 days a week for an hour and a half and track every macro, and you're gonna have to take all these supplements, and you have to do cardio 40 minutes a day. Like, yeah, I'm good. That sounds terrible, right? So how do you create a model that actually aligns with what your prospect, what your dream client has already tried and failed at, and give them a new model? And I'm gonna talk about that more in depth tomorrow, actually. So here's the new way. The new way is permission-based connection marketing, okay? And just as an example, maybe this guy's on the street, and he's saying, hey, look, if you're a bride-to-be, I'd love you to join my Facebook group so I can show you how my bride-to-be method can help you lose 20 pounds in 8 weeks. That's a little bit of a stretch, but bear with me. Without sacrificing margarita night. You know, he's not trying to sell anything. He's saying, hey, can I have your permission to put you into a place that I can give more value to you, right? And I'm gonna do a quick example of this in the context of how to get a girlfriend. So person A, you guys know this guy? Person A finds a girl that he thinks is hot on Tinder, and he thinks, man, she seems to fit my perfect girlfriend avatar. And he proceeds to look her up on Instagram, and he thinks, man, this is perfect. All right, so he cold DMs her. Hey girl, you're an 11 out of 10. We should hang out sometime. Heart eye emojis. Hey, here's a dick pic. I'm just kidding. But you know, he'll then proceed to think, this kind of mindset will proceed to think, well, this just isn't working because I need a new line. My line's not working, right? I need another tactic. He then proceeds to back on Tinder, and then he accidentally messages the same girl's sister. That happens sometimes. You have to watch that. Just like most coaches will think, well, look, I need more followers, or I just don't have enough people in my audience, or there aren't any of my ICAs in my audience. Guys, that's bullshit. Lacey Healy built a 10K a month business with like, what, I don't know, a couple thousand followers. She's not the only, it happens all the time, but it's those who have the right model and the right intent behind their messaging. We'll get more into this. But actually, dumbass, maybe your just approach sucks, right? All right, person B. This guy. He instead takes time to get to know his prospects, right? He consumes her content. He actually gives a shit. He knows what she wants out of life, what her interests are, what her biggest problem is that she is facing in her life, and what frustrates her the most. Then one day, she posts about experimenting with keto, and for several weeks, she's become frustrated with not being able to get into ketosis, all right? So, problem identified, cool. She's been stuck in the keto flu, right? Feeling like shit, low energy, low mood. So person B sends a friendly comment asking for permission to send something of value. And here's how the conversation would go. Hey, I saw you're experimenting with keto, and I understand you're frustrated because no matter how low you lower your carbs, you just can't seem to get your body in ketosis. It's making you feel like shit. Mind if I give you some tips? She says, sure, daddy. He says, hey, how much protein are you consuming? Are you taking EAAs? It's likely that, in the absence of glycogen and carbohydrates, because you're consuming EAAs and BCAAs, your body's using that as it's gluconeogenesis. You guys know how this works. Does that help? Then after permission, he ends up getting a doggy date. And after 3 years later, they own a home together, multi-million-dollar business, awesome team, 3 dogs, and it worked, right? The story was about us, by the way. All right. So anyways, power of free Facebook groups to get permission to market and connect. So most people, when they come to social media, they don't open Instagram and think, man, I'm ready to buy coaching today. I'm going to go to Instagram to shop for my next coach. It's just not how it works. They go on there because, well, bored, right? Because it's very addicting, or to connect, right? Because we are social creatures, but we're limited, especially in today's world, in the capacity in which we can connect socially. So they're not on there to buy, but they do get curious. Okay, people get curious when a messaging hits. So in today's world, we live in this experience economy. Okay, so driving clients to a free Facebook group and offering extended level of support is really just a powerful mechanism, both early in your business or if you're ready to scale. But remember, the goal here is to give away your best shit for free. And it doesn't mean giving away, your high-ticket offer or like coaching necessarily, but you want to be in there teaching them the what, not necessarily the how. Because people, and also it's an opportunity for you to get closer in proximity to learn more about who you are. Because in this space, we all know people buy coaches, not coaching, right? But in the experience economy, people will think, I just need to get a taste of your coaching and a taste of like what it's going to be like with the experience working with you, right? Because you're in their corner. They need you as their person. So you've got to find a way to get permission to get closer in proximity. So what this does too with the connection-based permission marketing model, it allows you to have 4 key components. Anticipated. People will eventually look forward to hearing from you because they're not inundated with as much stuff. Number 2, it becomes more personal. So messaging relates directly to the individual. Number 3, it's relevant, right? We're creating more relevancy because they're in a group for a reason, because you've made a big promise about helping them solve a problem. They're much more likely to give a shit about that message. And connection, right? So imagine how much easier it would be DMing someone after they've been in a free Facebook group and have received ample loads of value. You've helped get them a result. You've helped give them epiphanies. Now you message them, they're like, hey, what's up, right? As compared to on social media where they're inundated with everything. Now, just for context, this piece of shit. All right, our ISTA community, we started in 2017, and I would say now it's directly responsible for more than 50% of the conversions, meaning the actual step that person takes to becoming a client, that last phase of the customer journey. Around 50% of like 400 to 450K in revenue. And it's a very, very powerful model that I wish I would have realized a few years ago, and leveraged it even more. Some mistakes that we made though in our group early on. So, number 1, no plan and strategy around really producing content or like generating opportunities to start conversations. Great process drives great results, okay? So if you don't have a process that you're sticking with, then you're just kind of like flying by the seat of your pants. You don't know when to turn that process up, that process down. any process is better than like even the shittiest process is better than no process, all right? And I'm gonna share with you guys today too an actual content production strategy, a system, a process that you can use for groups that'll be really helpful. Number two, we weren't targeted enough or specific enough, right? We had no real irresistible offer or leverage in that group. It was like, it's embarrassing to say, hey, join our free Facebook community for coaches who want to change lives. It could be a lot better. It could be a lot better. Trying to add everyone in this group instead of specific people who fit within our ideal client avatar mold. All right, let's talk about building the group. How do we actually get started? And hopefully this is helping, guys. We're gonna get technical here. I'm gonna give you some step-by-step shit that you can actually use. Number one, eliminate the bullshit. So eliminate any nonsense that screams, I'm not an authority. Cat memes, excessive partying, complaining. That shit's fine for your organic channel because you're talking to more people who are further in proximity and you're just kind of trying to catch attention, right? But when they get in that group, the group should be a little bit more focused on the problems that you're solving. Now you can still offer connection in there, but you're not gonna go live in your free Facebook community and just talking about your kids running around and you're pissed off because Cindy at Starbucks forgot your drink order. That shit's fine for social media, but the Facebook group should be a little bit more specific, right? Number two, your profile picture. Really pretty simple. Make sure to have a semi-professional, casual photo that gives some kind of a good vibe, shows your face, and if you can, add any kind of authority triggers. For example, I'm definitely gonna put a photo of myself speaking in front of you guys as a picture in the group. Builds initial authority, right? And you guys can stage that if you want. Your bio. So make it obvious about what you do and who you help, and include your own method if possible. And when I say method, I'm gonna talk about that tomorrow in terms of your unique mechanism, your formula for how you actually get clients' results, and why that's so important in today's market. But a few formulas that you can have as your bio, I help blank avatar to blank result by blank method. I help blank avatar to blank result without maybe what's one of their objections, one of their limiting beliefs. My clients enjoy blank result by using my blank method, or I turn current situation to desired situation. Simple formulas. Bonus, if you can include a link if you have a lead magnet or anything to get them on your email list. But there's also a system I'll share that will make sure that we get those people on a list. Number four, or just some examples. And guys, I'll pass out this PowerPoint too, so you guys can have these to look as examples. But especially, now listen, if you have not helped 500 women, I probably wouldn't say that, right? But just giving you an idea here. Now your banner. How do you position your banner? The banner funnels people to your group, all right? There should be a link in the description. And guys, whoever's in IFCA, you're gonna get a detailed step-by-step training on how to do this, because we are gonna encourage a lot of Facebook group leverage for acquisition moving forward. Link in the description. Can and also should include your formula, right, in the banner. Just some technical stuff, that's the photo size you should use, right? And if you can include some before and afters of your clients, it builds immediate social proof, right? Builds immediate authority and expert positioning. So just some examples. Nick, you're friends with this guy. He does a good job with his group. All right, we're gonna talk about filling the group now. How do we actually get people in it? So there are three methods to fill the group, all right? There's number one. Well, first, here's kind of a flow chart of how this would look. So these are different acquisition channels that we talked about that are up here at the top of your funnel. And the goal is to drive people all from these places into the free community. Even referrals, right? Because let's say you get a referral and you get them on the phone, but they're not ready to buy right now. That's fine. People buy one of two times, right? You guys have heard me say this a million times, now or later. But it's very important that if they're not ready to buy, you still give them something, right? Give them something of value to help them. And that's where the power of the Facebook community can come, right? So from the Facebook community, now you're getting permission to then step into the connection conversation, right? Because the conversation point is key. People hate on DM outreach, which it's all context dependent, right? But if you can get permission to have a conversation because you've given that person value, then that's a lot different. Then you go into an application, into your CRM, book a call. So the first way is other people's traffic, all right? So that's kind of what I talked about already, the Dream 100 model. You're collaborating. Maybe you're doing joint JVs where you're presenting. Guys, I wouldn't worry about this, the stage that anybody's at. It's one of the least efficient ways, but it could be something you could look at in the future. The other way, paid advertising, all right? We're going to talk about that a little bit in a second, and then also migrating your current traffic to the group. Cool. Let's talk about migrating traffic. So a really great way to do this initially, and you can do this multiple times, would be creating what we call a two-step post. And this is something I've learned. I got to shout out Cole Gordon, who I've learned a lot of this from. But create a two-step post that drives a targeted demographic of traffic from your personal platforms to your Facebook group, okay? And what this means is, what is a two-step? Basically, it's like you're going to have a call to action to comment below in order to receive an invitation to whatever your thing is, all right? So this could be in a lot of different ways, and I'll share some examples. But you're triggering a prospect to raise their hand, all right? You're going to hear me say this a lot, raise their hand, raise their hand. All that means is like, hey, I'm interested, not ready to buy, right? But it's like, hey, you have my permission to give me something. That's how we have to look at this. You have to give in order to eventually receive. What we found works best for these are live trainings, webinars, masterclass, things like that. It could be a 5-day challenge, something like that you run maybe once every couple of months with the sole intent of driving people to that group. The sole intent of the challenge, again, is not to acquire customers, acquire clients. You probably will convert a few, but it's to drive people to the group. Yep, and all it is, hey, CTA with a comment, whatever your phrase is, could be anything, whatever, and to join the group. And then everyone who comments, you then message them immediately and say, hey, do you still want that invite? Because what that does, guys, that's already created that initial micro commitment of, hey, I'm willing to have a conversation with you now because you didn't try to sell me something. You're giving something. So now you've opened the door for that conversation to follow up down the road. And then what you can do eventually is you can basically create something that's more evergreen. And I'll talk about that in a second, but it's like I would run these live a few times, and then eventually you can create something that's of high value. It could be a mini course, or it could be high value free training, or a lead magnet that just lives at the top of that group as a pinned post. So anybody who joins your group automatically gets something of value. So then your call to action is, hey, join my group in order to XYZ, right? Just like a lead magnet. This is a way to deliver a lead magnet that gets them into a Facebook group. Am I making sense, guys? Cool. All right. We'll get into this a little bit more as we talk about content, but now I want to talk about why paid ads and this can be a very, very, very dope model. So I'm going to explain paid ads in 2 frames. Phase 1, that's like early, getting started, just getting your feet wet. Phase 2, scaling ads, and when, how, why, what, all that stuff. So phase 1, getting started. Guys, this can be as little as $10 a day, and it doesn't have to be overly complicated. And Augusto is actively building out a mini course for IFCA students to teach guys, done with you, how to build out your ads, and it's Augusto Thomas. Way easier than you would probably expect, especially when you don't have intention of like, I'm gonna build $1 million business from paid ads tomorrow. No, you're just getting some new eyeballs into a Facebook group. So phase 1 goal is, again, just to get your feet wet, learn the basics, and work to add new eyeballs into your audience. And don't put excess pressure on yourself to learn everything and like be a Facebook ads expert. So conditions for starting ads for this phase 1. I would say number 1, you gotta validate your offer. So if you have not proven at least to a tangible degree that organically your offer resonates with people, right? People have raised their hand, you've sold clients, it's not gonna work on paid ads either. You're gonna waste your money, right? So you gotta learn how to acquire leads organically to some degree and be comfortable with sales processes, right? And that includes having DM conversations and booking people through connection, right? Basic copywriting and positioning skills. Fulfillment and operation systems are down, you're good there. And you've built and tested, well, this is like a maybe. Maybe you've got a lead magnet that you've already created and tested, and it's like, hey, got that out of the way. And I used to think, only when you have like a massive base do you run paid ads. Like that used to be what I think, and that used to probably be true, but this market is changing really fast, all right? Organic reach is declining. There's a lot more people vying for people's attention. So you've got to step back and play more of the long game here. So that's why I'm a little bit more of a fan of people starting out a little bit sooner than I used to. So phase 2 is scaling paid ads. All right, what are the conditions for this? Basically everything above. And all this is now is pouring gasoline on an already lit fire that you've created with effective organic systems. So you want to make sure at this point when you're ready to really scale paid ads and blow your business up, right? Like you've got the capacity to take on clients. Like I should be able to ask you the question, hey, if I threw 100 clients on your lap, what would you do? Like if we're ready to turn this up, like few people in this room are ready for that, for sure. You've outsourced a lot of your non-revenue generating activities, right? You've hired EAs, VAs, people on your team to help you do things that are not contributing to the health and the growth of your business. Anything non-revenue generating activities. That means anything that's not sales and marketing, basically. You've probably hired a inside sales rep or DM outreach rep, appointment setter, as you'll hear us talk about them. They're hitting their KPIs, you've got this down. And again, you have room for fulfillment. And here's the model. I like me some flowcharts. So here's how you would model this from a paid acquisition standpoint, all right? You have your ad over here. It could be a swipe up ad, it could be a basic creative with nice hook, speaking directly to who you're trying to talk to with an offer. And then that's gonna go into, actually this should be up here. This is gonna go into either mini chat, or you don't necessarily have to have mini chat. It would just be a way to then deliver the freebie, the lead magnet, that then gets them into the Facebook group, okay? That's all. And then from here, what's gonna happen is as soon as they join the group, they're gonna be asked questions around what they're struggling with, usually 4 questions. Based on those 4 questions, you're gonna have somebody on your team, could be a VA, whoever, send them something of extreme value that helps them with that thing. The 4 questions need to be, hey, what do you struggle with most? The more specific, the better, right? Like if it's a mom, right? It's like, hey, is it finding foods to fit into you and your kids' diet, right? Or whatever it might be. Then you're gonna send them a high value training directly right away. So you've now got them in the group and you've gotten permission by them being in the group that, hey, I'm gonna send you something to help you, right? Then that opens the door for a conversation down the road. But here's where the real secret sauce lies, over here. Because once they're in the Facebook group, your chances of getting them into these other channels are a lot higher, right? To getting them into your email list, a lot higher, because you can drop a lead magnet in there. You've already got their permission. They're gonna take another action, especially when you're not asking for money. You can do retargeting, Facebook ads, you can do all kinds of shit, and then eventually they'll book into a sales call. All right, guys, now we're gonna talk about organic content pillars, and this applies not only to a Facebook group, but this can be like the core pillars of your content organically all around. And this part I think is gonna really give you guys a lot of clarity. So to start, we wanna talk about what's called pipeline equity. Does anybody know what this term means? Anybody ever heard this, pipeline equity? So basically what this means is the amount of goodwill that you have with your audience and your pipeline that you've not yet tapped into. So to explain on this a little bit further, 2 things that increase pipeline equity. You add more people to your pipeline, right? You guys understand equity principles, right? Just like in a house, the more money that you have in that house that you've actually paid for, you now have equity in the home that you own. So if you add more people to your pipeline, inherently, you're gonna grow your equity. Or you give more value without asking for anything, right? That's why, M. Dunk's a good example of this. You know, we got a lot of great examples. Nick, like people who have built these raving fan audience bases, it's because they've been given so much for free for so long before making outlandish offers, right? So if you do that for long enough, guys, we get some people that come into IFCA and they're sitting on this just fucking gold mine and they have no idea because they've been giving without any intent. Now this can work the other way too. What decreases equity? Shitty content. That's a big one. Or just making too many offers, especially when you're like too early on. Like if you're trying to just, you know, milk something that you don't have enough equity with, you're gonna fuck yourself, man. So when it comes to the decreasing equity, you gotta think about this in terms of like what Gary Vee says, right? Jab, 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 left hook. The more CTAs, the more hard offers you make, the more equity will decrease. And what you're trying to do here by not having that intent is you're trying to train your audience and to expect value from you, entertaining things that they want to connect with you over. Maybe it's aha moments, like epiphanies, humor, things that your ICA can actually use relating to your ideal client, right? And I want to share something on that point, relating to your ideal client. And I took this from my friend Andrew Coates, who put this up, and I think it's perfect. But the video of you doing an ass-to-grass pistol squat with a 40-pound dumbbell and a weight vest might impress your peers. Like, I think it's cool. But to the client that you're trying to speak to is probably terrifying. Like, that seems fucking hard and terrible. I don't want to do that. And this person's nervous about entering a busy weight room, right? And here you are, like, hey, let me just make that way worse. So you got to be relatable to who it is you're actually trying to speak to, all right? And unless you're willing to, look, there are other ways to do this. If you're willing to show up for, let's say, 2 to 3 straight years, not make any offers, and establish yourself as an authority for more, like, sophisticated buyers And then you compete in the game with like Nick Comodina's, with the Emily Duncans, right? For their kind of clients that they're going after. Sure, if you do that, fine, 2 to 3 years. But otherwise, you're stepping in the game with somebody like Nick Comodina, who's got way more authority and expert positioning than you. Who do you think they're going to choose, right? So you got to just get clear with who it is you're actually trying to work with. All right, offer volume in marketing. I'll give you guys some tactics around actually how to do this. The amount of sales calls that you generate in your content will be directly correlated to the amount of offers that you make. Not that surprising, I'm sure. But direct offers will always outproduce the more indirect, but they do tap equity. So overall, you have to have this balance, right? More offers, more appointments, more sales calls, but less equity. More value, less appointments, but more equity. And here's the point here, guys. Pigs get fed and hogs get slaughtered, right? I've seen this too many times. Like, we've worked with over 500 plus coaches now, and they come in and they have some success early on, and they don't have a ton of pipeline equity, but we give them a lot of tools that help them get clients, and they're like, I'm just gonna wring this motherfucker dry, right? I'm gonna make offer. And next thing you know, their business starts slowing down. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. Why your business is slowing down. So you gotta play the long game, and you gotta think, okay, like, why are you so eager to, let's say, hit that 15K month after being in business for 4 months? What is it about that? Do you need 15K to cover your expenses? Or is it just because you saw that's what somebody else did? And why is it that, like, why is it that you're so focused on this? With IFCA, for example, we spent 3 years only taking clients 2 months out of the year. 2 months out of the year. All right, round 1, we had 15 students, 5 of which we let in for free. Launch 2, we had 24 students. Then year 2, launch 3, we had 34. Launch 4, we had 41. Year 3, 55. Launch 6, we had 71. So now we're moving to Evergreen after 3 years and only taking clients 6 months out of those 3 years. So think about the amount of pipeline equity we've just built. Because not only have we not made offers during those periods, we couldn't because we don't have anything to sell you, right? So how do you think of this more long-term? Because again, it's not wasting time. Like, you're building equity for the longer payoff down the road. And if we would have like tried to rush into this, year 1 and say like, we're gonna dominate this space and we're gonna like take everything over, I don't know. It probably wouldn't have worked. So what Evergreen means too, by the way, guys, for anybody who's not clear, launch versus Evergreen. Evergreen just means we're now taking clients all year round rather than just 2 months out of the year. And it's funny, we were on a call with a mentor recently and he's like, man, you guys had a big jump in revenue here recently. He's like, what contributed to that? I was like, well, we're selling more than 2 months out of the year. that makes it easy. So the question here that we get oftentimes is how often should I post? And I'm gonna be kind of quick with this, guys, because I wanna make sure we keep on time. But how often should I post? We get that question a lot. So Carter Good, what should my macros be? See how that works? Right? Like, it depends. It depends on what you're trying to do. And first of all, I hate this question, but it depends. Context is important, right? What's your goal with your business? If you're brand new, I would say that you should post pretty often because nobody's watching, nobody really cares, and you probably suck. So you should post probably every day so you can suck less to where eventually when people are paying attention, your content's better, right? But if, let's say you're not brand new, then I would encourage quality over quantity. So, beginners, again, learn actually how to post. Everyone else, as often as you can while still providing value, but also making it dependent on your client acquisition needs, okay? So if you're looking at your business and like you've got some sales calls in the calendar, everything's looking good, you've got some revenue, maybe you take a step back from hard call to actions, hard direct offers. You just focus on building pipeline equity. So when it comes to content, I want you guys to think about this with 3 buckets, okay? Within these 3 buckets, you have direct offer, indirect, and you have non-CTA. But within these 3 buckets, all the connection and authority applies, except for direct offer. Direct offer is like, yo, you should know within the first 1 or 2 sentences of that post that this is an offer, right? So to go into that a little bit, again, 1 to 2 lines, you should know what it is. They're not receiving value on this post unless they actually take an action. And it's the most effective at getting clients, right? Blunt posts are a great example of this. They work well, but I wouldn't make a blunt post fucking 3 times a week. Probably not a great idea. And they're way underutilized too. I think a lot of people have fear about making direct offers for whatever reasons, and they work great, but again, you just gotta have some perspective in terms of what your actual acquisition needs are. But because this will tap your equity the most. An indirect offer. This starts with just value and then ends with a CTA at the end. So the person reading this or seeing your piece of content is still getting value, but you're actually calling an action at the end. So regardless of if they take an action, they're still getting value. Telling a story, you guys know all the things, right? Telling a story, adding value. It does tap some equity, but not as much as direct offers. And it's not as effective as direct, but you also won't burn your audience out. Now the third, non-CTA, pure value, right? This is the worst way to get sales calls, but it's also the best way to build equity. And again, if your client needs are not urgent right now, just check yourself, right? Like, really think about it. Think about the long game. Like, are you making these hard offers and just like running 100 miles an hour just to try to fill some void? I get it. I do it all the time too. Or or can you say, look, I've got a good client base here. I'm going to focus on building equity in my pipeline for the long term, and maybe investing into other acquisition mediums like paid ads, like we talked about, right? Baseline content strategy. Run through this real quick. This is how we manage our group. And again, IFCA students, any IFCA clients, you'll get access to this as we're going to have like swipe files, posting examples, templates. Monday would be an engagement post. All right, the goal of this is just to drive comments and a conversation, to get people used to engaging with your stuff. People know Bike Shed. I learned Bike Shed from John Romanella. I'm not going to go into the story. Maybe if you ask him what Bike Shed means during the Q&A, he'll tell you. But it's something that's quick, right? Just to start a conversation that's easy for people to engage with. Tuesday, a few different options here. And what we do, guys, is we kind of rotate and cycle between these. And we have a system that I'll share with you guys that will allow you to kind of batch content with a directory using Google Docs. And it'll allow you to essentially post and post and post and post. You have this directory to where eventually, 6 months down the road, you can come all the way back up to the top and you can have somebody repurposing that shit for you. So you can start to automate your content buckets over time. And I'll share with you guys a system for that. But this could also be a CTA or a client win, case study, testimonial. Wednesdays are usually what we make more direct offers, all right? It could be a mission post like this, where the goal is to get people to raise their hand, to engage in a conversation. That conversation eventually leads into a sales call. It could also be a two-step post. Two-step post meaning, hey, listen, I made this free training to teach moms how to, I know I keep using this example, to teach moms how to make making dinners with your family really simple and easy using my 3-step recipe process, right? Comment below if you want it. Now what they're doing is they're giving you permission to engage in that conversation, to give them something of value that over time, now you can follow up and say, hey, what are you struggling with? Like, let me see if I can help. Thursday, promo post for whatever Friday's event might be. I think Fridays we typically do like a live training, or it could be a like client interview. Come on. Piece of shit. Guest training, whatever you want to do for Fridays. And here's the thing, guys. That's kind of the end of that. And we're going to go into the expert Q&A if you guys have questions on this stuff. But you have two options in this industry as you start thinking about like the long-term vision of your company. Because I know what this happens a lot of times. You guys hear these things, and you see all this marketing stuff, and you're like, I don't want to be a marketer. Lane Norton might judge me, right? And it's like, your option one is, I don't want to do that. That's not me. What will Lane Norton think? Okay. Or option two, learn the science of marketing, human psychology, create wealth, make a massive impact on an industry that desperately needs coaches. But it's up to you guys to learn the shit that maybe you don't want to learn, but you need to dig in to figure out why. Like, what are the beliefs? I'm really glad Emily brought this up in a way better way than I am. And the thing that I want to encourage you guys or remind you of is that people die of bad habits, all right? What if I told you that the person on the other end of the phone you're on a sales call with was your mom, or maybe the person who's seeing your content? And if you know that if you do not start speaking to her in a right way that's going to get her to take an action or get her to actually invest in herself, that she could actually lose years on her life, right? She could potentially not get to see the grandkids that she wants to see. She could be in a sullen fog waiting for the shoe to drop. And it's really a question of priorities and values. And if you're going to let your own flawed beliefs and fear of judgment be the reason that your business does not grow and that you do not make the impact that you know that you want to make, or are you going to challenge your beliefs and model what works for the betterment of something outside of yourself that doesn't have to do with you? And at the end of the day, like my boy Garrett White here says, you can be popular or you can be paid. And when I say paid, that's the metric to tell you the value that you're actually putting in. So we're sharing with you the law of value. Cool, that's it, guys.